Jeff Gorham is a member of our team here at Frost Brown Todd and an associate in our insurance practice. He does a lot of blockchain and cryptocurrency, and he's done a lot of ICOs and other things in the space. So he's going to talk to us a little bit about blockchain and that implications into the insurance industry.
All right, thank you, Jesse. As Jesse said, I'm Jeff Gorham. I'm with Frost Brown Todd. I split my time between the blockchain and cryptocurrency team and the insurance regulatory team. I'm sorry I couldn't get one of my friends from LA or San Francisco to come out. We tried, but couldn't convince any of them to come here in January. So you're stuck with me for now. In the interest of time, I think we're a little behind schedule, so I'm going to try to get through this quickly so we can all get to happy hour early. If anyone has any questions that I don't get to today or in this talk, please feel free to grab me anytime and be happy to talk. All right, so today I'm going to talk about three main types of blockchain concepts that you're probably all thinking of or have already been thinking of. The first is the blockchain and distributed ledgers, generally types of cryptocurrencies and their uses, and smart contracts. So begin with blockchain ledgers are the underlying technology to support cryptocurrencies. And I can't see the monitor. Can someone turn a monitor towards me so I can see what the slides say? Thank you, Dan. And essentially they're just an encrypted chronological ledger. Thank you. An encrypted transactional ledger. And all this is keep track of transactions. Now the key difference here between blockchains and traditional ledgers are historically centralized and private. So you have one Excel file on a computer someplace or on a server someplace. As opposed to blockchains are distributed or decentralized across many computers. So in the case of Bitcoin, it is a distributed ledger where anyone can download it, and it is across countless computers across the world, as opposed to a decentralized is not quite that big. So some of the characteristics of blockchains are they are encrypted chronological ledgers, and transactions require significant amounts of work to be complete. So what that means is that a computer has to decrypt, or rather process a transaction by solving a mathematical equation. To that effect, they're immutable. So whenever these transactions are logged onto a block, you cannot alter a block after the fact. The ledger can only be amended later. And transactions are added in blocks, which means that each transaction is grouped together in a time period. In the case of Bitcoin, it's every 10 minutes. There's a new block added, and it has to be validated by all the other computers on the system node, or at least 51%, in order to be added. And they're done in a chain-like fashion. What that looks like is this. Pointer out? Maybe. If it'll reach, it won't. All right, so down at the bottom I have a transaction record from Jeff's Bitcoin wallet to Bob's Bitcoin wallet, Bob's address. And we'll add that to the very last block of transactions. And if you see, each part of each block from the left to the right on the bottom is reinserted at the top of the next block. So this is how we get the term chain. We have the blocked transactions, and each block has part of the previous block attached to it, so they are linked together as a chain. So how will that be integrated into insurance? Well, you're going to have an immutable data trail. So transactions are captured, securely kept together, and they cannot be altered after the fact. So if you have anyone that maybe screws up a payment date, you better make sure that they don't do that. There will be no unauthorized transactions, because to add a new transaction to a block takes a significant amount of electricity and work. And in order to do that, to alter a previous block, you would have to not only alter that block, but every block that came after, because the encryption would be altered. So each transaction that is attempted to be phony or fraudulent or altering a previous block will be rejected by all the other computers. And cryptographic transactions are going to have a greater amount of data security and privacy. And in that effect, you're going to have a lot of data integrity, to where if you're ever audited, you can say, we use a blockchain system, it cannot be altered, and it can only be amended, and therefore our data is intact. Have I lost anybody yet? All right. Types of cryptocurrencies and their uses. There's 4 main types of cryptocurrencies in my mind, but I'm going to focus on 2 that you should probably be thinking about. The first type is a protocol token. That's your Bitcoin or your Litecoin. And what that means is the only thing that's really backing up the cryptocurrency is the code. You just have a trust in the system. People trust Bitcoin. People trust Litecoin. And it usually acts as a store of value or more like cash. It's really the only purpose. As opposed to a utility or application token, well, that looks more like a game token if you go to the arcade. So some people use them to store value, but really it has some sort of integral function. Maybe you need it to tie a transaction to a particular blockchain ledger, or maybe you can only use it within that ecosystem. But again, it goes back to this real application, real utility, as opposed to acting like a currency. So how might that work out in your insurance systems? Well, you're probably going to get protocol tokens as premium payments if you're going to go that route. Volatile price fluctuations do happen on Bitcoin, if you haven't heard already. So to that effect, you're going to want to put the consumer on the hook for any sort of price fluctuations. You can also use payment processors to help facilitate that. So what that means is there are companies that act as third-party intermediaries between you and a consumer to process those to convert the cryptocurrency to dollars. So you get dollars instead of crypto. The other side of it is there are companies out there that offer a debit card system that can be tied to a consumer's cryptocurrency wallet. So they would just walk up with a Visa or MasterCard and swipe it just as they would any other Visa or MasterCard at a grocery store. And the company takes care of all the back end of processing the Bitcoin conversion to US dollars. You can also outsource transactional processing. So if you use network miners to process transactions, you will only reward them per transaction. So instead of paying someone to sit in a cubicle and maybe chit-chat or shop for shoes, you actually only pay someone that's perhaps outside of your building to process the transactions. So smart contracts are self-automated computer programs that can carry out terms of any contract. So what does that mean? Well, it's mostly based on objective conditions. So if this happens, then do X. If John Smith dies tomorrow, then pay his life insurance policy to X Chase bank account number. But there's a problem. They really don't like to think on their own. So there are variables. Well, how do we correct for variables in this closed system of just if-then criteria? Well, we use oracles. So I know what some of you might be thinking is, I already know what an oracle is. It's one of my favorite movie franchises. This is Neo from The Matrix talking to the Oracle. But there are some similarities that I found after making this pun, is that, she looks outside of the Matrix and sees what really could be. And so to that effect, oracles operate in the same fashion in smart contracts. So how can that be integrated? Well, you can automate claim settlements. There are already companies that are using travel insurance to where you have an app on your phone. If your flight is delayed by more than 2 hours, then it will automatically ping the FAA flight records to determine that your flight was delayed and start paying you into your checking account immediately. In property and casualty insurance, they're also doing this with crop insurance. So if there's a drought in Kansas and they don't receive enough rain, we're going to go ahead and pay the crop farmers X amount of dollars based on their losses. And in life and annuities, if any of you transact that sort of business, you're on the hook when someone dies if their social security number is added to the death master file. And you have to start paying interest after so many days. So if you can set up a smart contract to just say, ping the social security death master file every day and see if any of these social security numbers pop up. And if so, then pay out the contract accordingly. You can automate business-to-business transactions too. So reinsurance settlements are on the horizon. Right now, you may have heard, if you have paid any attention to cryptocurrencies, about the cryptocurrency called Ripple. Ripple was created by a network of banking systems in order to settle transactions every day. What this means is across international waters, many banks would do this every month. And there would be some float, there would be some delay in settling transactions. Instead, they use Ripple to do it on a daily basis based on their transactions. If you extrapolate that out, you could do this in reinsurance transactions. If you have an assumed risk from another carrier and their policy lapses or forfeits or is closed, you can go ahead and settle that immediately instead of doing an end-of-the-month settlement. So with that, I think I've got a few minutes. I'd be willing to take a couple of quick questions if anyone has them. Yes, Jessica.
So the two big cons that came out of your speech were, So the two big cons that came out of your speech was electricity. There's a lot of electricity is used, and also it's slow, 1 every 10 minutes. Talk about how the insurance industry is going to be able to overcome some of that, or make use of some of these pitfalls in to do business.
So whenever I alluded to the long transaction times, Bitcoin uses 10-minute increments. There are other blockchains such as Litecoin that operate on 2-minute increments. As far as transactional costs, Bitcoin takes a lot of electricity to process all the transactions because when you're a network miner, you have to start with the very first transaction and mine them all. There are other protocols. The Ethereum network uses a system called sharding, which is where they take out the different parts, the different functions of the contract, and subrogate those to smaller and delegate those to smaller systems. And then those systems work together, go to the larger network, and then they correct their master ledger. So it's sort of just delegating some of the smaller workload. And to that effect, you can scale that out and have a smaller scale system than just the simple proof of work that Bitcoin may require. Yes, Cornelius.
I'm gonna wait till the mic. I'm loud anyway, but I'll wait till the mic. Earlier, can you hear me? Earlier, there was a lot of talk about PII and personal identifying information that comes through, and I started thinking about that from the perspective of why is that absolutely necessary in order for you to insure someone, right? Do you really need to know their date of birth, their address, and so on and so forth, right? How do you see blockchain with the immutability of it all and the idea that, you know, you have this address that is locked to you, and with these contracts being able to actually get all the information that I need to be able to get my insurance, right? Do you see that as a way of actually getting rid of the risk of storing that PII data and now using this blockchain with some of that
Yeah, and I think that the PII will be, you know, there are already people, about a year and a half ago, 2 white papers came out of the MIT Media Lab where they were working on a health system to where you could carry around a flash drive in your pocket and walk into any doctor's office, and instead of sitting for 45 minutes filling out paperwork every single time you go to a new doctor, you give them the flash drive and they will tie that to a network, and you will have a trusted key, your private key, and they will have a public key to where you grant them access to unlock your file. And that's all encrypted. And so to that effect, I think that there are a lot of opportunities to sort of, as I said before, eliminate a lot of this paperwork that no one likes to do anyway, expedite that process, but it'll still be encrypted. It's still in the works, and it's been a year and a half long. They figured out how to do it on decentralized, smaller scale networks. The problem is trying to figure it out on a public, and they haven't done it yet, but I expect it very soon. So with that, I think I got time for one more question.
Why would a hacker want to be paid in Bitcoin? We've seen that on the cybersecurity side. Maybe I'm missing the point, but what would the benefit be?
Yeah, so there were some hackers that came out a while back that did a lot of ransomware and wanted to be paid in Bitcoin. Frankly, it was not very smart, which a lot of criminals aren't all that smart, let's face it. But we can actually trace back all of those transactions where they were paid in Bitcoin directly to the payment wallet that they had. So we can trace every single transaction that happened. Now, we don't really know because they have an encrypted username. We don't know exactly who those people are, but if ever there was money spent from that Bitcoin wallet, we may be able to trace it there. In my opinion, whenever I see it on TV, it's not a very smart move. Dash, for instance, is another very similar cryptocurrency that is completely anonymous. Bitcoin is not. But to that effect, I don't see a lot of sense in that from a hacker's perspective. So with that, I think that's my time. Feel free to grab me if you have any other questions.